Every apex predator has a rival. The lion has the hyena clan. The tiger has other tigers. The polar bear has the walrus. Even the great white shark, that ancient nightmare of the coasts, has to look over its shoulder for one thing: the orca. In every ecosystem on this planet, the crown always comes with a shadow. Someone is always waiting. Someone is always circling. But there is one animal in the ocean that breaks this rule so completely that biologists still argue about how to categorize it. An animal that hunts in a world no rival can enter, wields a weapon no rival can survive, and moves through the sea with a confidence bordering on arrogance. It has no natural enemy that has ever won, no coalition that has ever succeeded, no pack coordinated enough, no predator big enough, no hunter smart enough. It is not the blue whale. It is not the great white. It is not even the orca. It is the sperm whale. And by every measurable standard science has, it is the only predator on Earth without a genuine rival. To understand why, we first have to understand what the word rival actually means in nature. A rival is not something that looks scary. It is something that can inflict a real cost. It is something that changes your behavior. A tiger avoids certain rivers because a saltwater crocodile can end its life in a single bite. A leopard hauls its kill into a tree because a lion will steal it. Behavior is the fingerprint of fear. And when marine biologists study sperm whale behavior across decades of tracking data, one pattern keeps returning. Nothing changes their behavior. Nothing reroutes their migration. Nothing shortens their dives. Nothing scatters their pods. In an ocean full of intelligent, coordinated killers, the sperm whale simply keeps doing what it wants, exactly when it wants, exactly where it wants. And to understand how any animal earns that kind of unbothered posture, you need to look at three things: where it lives, what it carries inside its skull, and what it does when something is foolish enough to test it. Let's start with where it lives. Because the sperm whale doesn't just live in the ocean. It lives in a version of the ocean that almost no other large predator can enter. Most of the drama we see in wildlife documentaries takes place in the top 300 meters of the sea. Sharks, dolphins, orcas, seals, tuna. The entire action layer of the marine world is compressed into a thin, sunlit ribbon at the surface. Go 1,000 meters down and the light disappears. Go 2,000 meters down and the pressure becomes crushing enough to collapse most animals from the inside. Go 3,000 meters down and you enter a world where the water is near freezing. The pressure exceeds 300 atmospheres, and the only sound is the distant groan of geological movement. This is where sperm whales hunt, routinely, casually, for hours. A single adult can descend past 2,000 meters on a normal dive, hold its breath for more than 90 minutes, and return to the surface without any visible sign of stress. No orca can follow. No shark can follow. No mammalian predator has evolved the physiology to survive that world for even a fraction of the time. Sperm whales have private hunting grounds the size of continents that no other animal can even visit. That alone would be enough to earn them a place among the ocean's untouchables. But depth is only the first layer of their advantage. The second layer is what happens inside their head, and this is where the sperm whale stops being a large mammal and starts becoming something closer to a biological machine. Roughly a third of a sperm whale's entire body is skull. Inside that skull sits the largest brain that has ever existed in any animal in the history of life on Earth. Over 17 pounds of tissue, more than 5 times the mass of a human brain. But that brain is only a small tenant in the space it occupies. The rest of the head is filled with a specialized organ system that has fascinated scientists for centuries. There is a waxy substance called spermaceti held inside a chamber above the whale's snout, and beneath it, a dense structure informally called the junk. Together, these two structures form the most powerful natural sonar system on the planet. When a sperm whale generates a click, it does so by forcing air across a set of biological lips at the front of its head. The sound bounces off a rear air sac, travels forward through the spermaceti and the junk, and is projected out into the water as a focused acoustic pulse. That pulse, measured by hydrophones in open ocean conditions, can reach around 230 decibels. To put that number in context, a jet engine at close range is about 150. A gunshot is about 160. The loudest concert speaker stack ever measured is around 180. Sperm whale clicks are, by a wide margin, the loudest sounds ever produced by a living creature. And underwater, sound is not just noise. Underwater, sound is force. Researchers studying squid, recovered after sperm whale hunts, have documented what appears to be acoustic stunning. Squid arriving at the surface disoriented, uncoordinated, or already dead without a visible mark. The leading interpretation is that the sperm whale isn't only using its clicks to see, it is using them to hit. It is walking through the darkest layer of the ocean, firing a directional cannon of sound that can locate, track, and potentially disable prey before physical contact even happens. Now imagine being a predator and considering, for a moment, attacking something that has this instrument built into its face. The third layer of the sperm whale's untouchability is behavioral. Because unlike almost every other large whale, the sperm whale does not flee. Its psychology is fundamentally different from the baleen whales, the humpback, the fin whale, the blue whale, who evolved as gentle filter feeders and rely on speed and distance to escape predators. Sperm whales evolved as active predators. They descend from a lineage of hunters that pursued, ambushed, and killed large prey. That predator wiring never left them. When a sperm whale pod perceives a threat, its default response is not evasion. Its default response is engagement. Adult females gather the calves into the center of the group, position themselves in a tight radial formation with their tails facing outward, and turn the entire pod into a single defensive organism. Every direction of approach is met with a wall of muscle, capable of generating strikes that can shatter a coordinated attacker. Marine biologists studying orca sperm whale encounters have observed this formation repeatedly, and they have documented the same outcome again and again: the orca's circle. They test, they probe, and then they leave. Not because they are outmatched in intelligence. Orcas are among the smartest hunters in the ocean, but because they understand the math. A single misjudged strike against a defensive sperm whale pod can result in fractured bones, internal hemorrhaging, or death. And in a predator's life, an injury that prevents hunting is a slow-motion execution. The risk-reward equation simply does not close. No matter how hungry the pod is, no matter how coordinated the attack, the sperm whale defense is a wall that costs more to break than anything on the other side is worth. And that is only the females. The males are a different story entirely. Sperm whales exhibit some of the most extreme sexual dimorphism of any large mammal on Earth. Adult females typically reach around 11 meters in length and weigh in the range of 15 to 20 tons. Adult males can grow past 18 meters, weigh in excess of 50 tons, and carry a head that alone can weigh more than a fully loaded shipping container. These bulls do not live in pods. They live alone, patrolling deep water for decades at a time. They do not need a defensive formation, because no formation is required for an animal that no other predator will approach. When historical whaling records are examined carefully, an unmistakable pattern emerges. The most feared prey among 19th century whalers was not the blue whale. It was not the humpback. It was the adult bull sperm whale. Whaling logbooks from that era describe encounters where a single bull would turn on the boats hunting it and deliberately attack. In 1851, a whaling ship named the Anne Alexander was struck twice by a wounded bull sperm whale off the coast of Chile. The impacts opened the hull and sank the ship in under an hour. Survivors described the whale as calm, deliberate, and coordinated in its assault. This was not an accident of collision. This was a large predator deciding to eliminate a threat. And the reason a 50-ton animal traveling at 15 knots can sink a wooden vessel is basic physics. The kinetic energy at that mass and velocity is measured in the tens of millions of joules, enough to shatter the ribs of any orca instantly and enough to destroy any predator naive enough to close the distance. Sperm whale bulls have never been reliably observed to lose a physical confrontation with any other marine animal. Not sharks, not orcas, not any historically recorded threat. In the modern ocean, they exist in a category of one. Now, a fair question at this point is whether any of the ocean's more famous killers have ever succeeded against a healthy adult sperm whale. Great white sharks have never been documented doing so. Tiger sharks have never been documented doing so. Mako sharks, bull sharks, six gills, none of them appear in the literature as successful sperm whale predators. Even orcas, the animal that most people would assume sits at the very top of every food chain, have no confirmed kill of a healthy adult sperm whale in the modern era. There are records of harassment. There are records of attempts on calves that were repelled by the pod. There are records of sperm whales in weakened states, sick, injured, or entangled in fishing gear, becoming vulnerable. But a healthy sperm whale, in open water, is essentially a closed case. Nothing catches them at depth. Nothing survives the sonar cone at close range. Nothing breaks the female defensive formation. Nothing outlives contact with a bull. And that is what no rival actually means. Not that they are invincible in some cartoon sense, but that in the entire ecosystem they occupy, there is no other species whose behavior meaningfully constrains theirs. They set their own terms. To fully appreciate how strange this is, it helps to remember that sperm whales are not new arrivals to the ocean. Their evolutionary lineage stretches back tens of millions of years, into an era when the seas contained predators that would make anything alive today look tame. The ancestors of the modern sperm whale shared water with a genus known as Leviathan, a raptorial whale with teeth the size of human forearms that hunted other whales as its primary food source. They shared water with Otodus megalodon, the largest macro-predatory shark that has ever lived. In that ancient ocean, being a large-bodied whale was not a defense. Being large was an invitation. And what the sperm whale lineage evolved through that gauntlet is a body plan tuned not just for survival, but for offense. The dense skull, the reinforced skeleton, the acoustic weaponry, the deep diving physiology, the tight social defense. Every one of these traits is a scar from an evolutionary war fought against opponents that no longer exist. The predators that could have contested the sperm whale went extinct. The sperm whale did not. When you look at a modern sperm whale, you are looking at a survivor of a much more violent ocean, moving through the current one with equipment that was overbuilt for enemies that are no longer here. The predators that occasionally test them today are, in evolutionary terms, working with far less. It is a mismatch built into the timeline itself. There is one more piece to this picture, and it is the piece that most people underestimate. Sperm whales are not just physically dominant. They are cognitively coordinated in a way that few other animals can match. Each sperm whale clan has its own dialect of clicks, patterns known as codas, that function as an acoustic identity. Individuals recognize each other by voice at long range. Pods across ocean basins have distinct cultural traditions in how they hunt, how they travel, and how they communicate. When one member of a pod is threatened, the response is not chaotic. It is coordinated at a level that researchers have compared to military doctrine. Distressed individuals have been documented calling other pods from tens of kilometers away, and reinforcements have been observed converging in time to disrupt attacks. In practical terms, this means an aggressor targeting a single sperm whale may find itself facing a much larger response than it planned for. The animal you attacked is broadcasting your presence across 1,000 square kilometers of ocean, and it is being heard. Very few predators are willing to gamble on an encounter where the numbers might multiply against them at any moment. Put all of this together, and you get the animal we started with. A predator that lives in a layer of the ocean no other predator can reach. a predator that carries the loudest weapon in the natural world inside its own head, a predator that fights instead of fleeing, a predator whose adults have no natural enemy and whose calves are defended by a formation that has held for millions of years, a predator descended from a lineage that outlived monsters, a predator with a communication system that lets it call for backup across the horizon. When you list these traits side by side, the conclusion is almost inevitable. The sperm whale does not sit at the top of the food chain the way an orca does, by being the most aggressive hunter in the room. It sits somewhere else entirely. It sits in a category the ocean does not really have another name for. An apex without competition, a predator without a peer, a hunter whose only genuine constraint is the size of the squid it decides to eat that day. And this is what makes the sperm whale so quietly fascinating to biologists. Most of nature's dominant stories are loud. They involve visible violence, obvious weapons, and constant conflict. The sperm whale's dominance is the opposite. It is silent, deep, and largely invisible from the surface. Most people will go their entire lives without ever seeing one, and yet it is arguably the most secure large animal on the planet. It does not need to prove anything to remain unchallenged. It simply exists in the parts of the ocean no rival can reach, inside social structures no rival can break, carrying anatomy no rival can survive, holding the evolutionary memory of a war its enemies did not win. In a world where every crown has a shadow, the sperm whale walks without one, which raises a question worth leaving with. If dominance in nature is defined not by aggression, but by the complete absence of anything willing to challenge you, then the sperm whale is not just the ocean's most unusual predator. It may be the closest thing this planet has ever produced to a creature that simply cannot lose. What we call the food chain assumes there is always something above. The sperm whale is the exception that quietly proves the rule wrong. It exists at a rank the ocean never designed a competitor for. If you want to keep exploring the strangest hierarchies of the natural world, the animals that break the rules other species have to live by, this is the channel to stay with. There is a lot more to uncover down there than most people realize, and the deeper we look, the stranger it gets.